found out about my affair and put holes in the condoms. Now I'm divorced and pregnant. I got pregnant while cheating on my husband. Little did I know he planned to catch me this way. I met my husband Dave in college. He was the kind of guy every girl wanted. Funny, smart, had his life together. We clicked from the start. He had this charm that made everything seem like it was going to be okay no matter what. And he was stable, safe, the kind of guy you could rely on. It just felt comfortable. After dating for a couple of years, we got married. We both had our careers going well, traveled a bit, bought a house, basically lived the life we thought we wanted. But if I'm being real, there was always this little voice in the back of my head saying something was missing. It's hard to explain, but that feeling when things are fine but not amazing? I tried to ignore it, pushed it down, figured that this was what adult life looked like. Maybe everyone feels like this after a few years of marriage. We were clear from the beginning, we didn't want kids. Not because we hated them or anything, but because we loved our freedom. We liked our late nights, last-minute trips, and the idea that we weren't tied down to anything or anyone. Dave was super careful about that. Condoms every time, no slip-ups. No, maybe we should reconsider conversations. He was serious, and I was too, at least I thought I was. But life does its thing, and somewhere along the line I got bored. The routine of everything, the predictability, it started to suffocate me. I started looking for something else, something that would make me feel alive again. That's when I met him. I won't go into all the details of how it happened. Honestly, it feels like it's a blur now. But let's just say I didn't plan for it. It wasn't like I went out searching for an affair, but when I found myself in that situation, I didn't stop it either. It started small. Texts, coffee here and there, the whole thing that you convince yourself is harmless. We're just talking, I'd tell myself. But we all know how that goes. One thing led to another, and suddenly I was living a double life. With Dave, I was still the same wife, supportive, affectionate, keeping up the front. But when I was with him, this guy from work, I felt like a completely different person. He gave me that spark I'd been missing. It was thrilling, dangerous even, and I couldn't get enough of it. Of course, I knew it couldn't last. Affairs don't end well. They never do. But for some reason, I wasn't ready to let go. Maybe part of me thought I'd never get caught. Dave was oblivious, or at least that's what I thought. But looking back, I should have known better. People aren't as blind as we think they are. So when I found out I was pregnant, it felt like the universe had decided to slap me in the face. I knew right away the baby wasn't Dave's. I mean, we had always been so careful. Things with the guy I was seeing were even more strict. Getting pregnant because of an affair was my biggest nightmare. Either way, sometimes condoms can play us without us even realizing it. My husband and I barely slept together anymore, so the math only pointed at one of them. The moment I saw that positive test, my world crumbled. I hadn't planned for this. I wasn't supposed to have kids, remember? But there it was, staring me in the face. I had no idea how to tell Dave, or if I even should. Should I just keep it quiet? Pretend it was his? I'm not proud of the fact that I actually considered that for a split second, but I knew deep down that it wouldn't work. Dave was too smart for that. Turns out I didn't have to worry about telling him. He already knew. I'll never forget the night he confronted me. I was sitting on the couch trying to act normal when he walked in, threw his phone on the table and said, "So, you want to explain this?" My heart dropped. I didn't even have to look at the screen to know what he was talking about. He had found out about the affair, obviously, but how? I stammered, tried to deny it, but there was no point. He had everything, texts, pictures, all the receipts. My carefully constructed double life came crashing down. And here's the kicker. In his anger, Dave did something I never saw coming. He admitted that, for a while now, he had suspected something was off. He found condoms in my purse, assumed I'd used them, and poked holes into all of them. That's right. The man who was against having kids, just like me, had sabotaged my birth control, trying to teach me a lesson about fidelity in the worst way possible. I remember sitting there numb, trying to process what he was saying. It was like some kind of nightmare you'd read about online, not something that actually happened in real life. But it was real, and I was living it. I had screwed up, and now everything was spiraling out of control. The divorce happened fast. Neither of us wanted to drag it out. Dave was furious, obviously, and I didn't blame him. I wasn't exactly proud of myself either. But now I was left to deal with the fallout. I was divorced, pregnant, and the father of the baby wasn't my ex-husband. After the divorce, I was left alone with a growing belly and a lot of regret. To say things got messy would be an understatement. My ex, Dave, had been my rock for years, and now he wasn't there. Sure, I had my affair, the guy from work, but he wasn't exactly thrilled when I told him about the baby. I guess it's one thing to sneak around and have a fling, but a whole other ballgame when there's an actual child involved. At first, he was in shock. I remember the look on his face when I told him, this mix of disbelief and fear. "Are you sure it's mine?" was the first thing he said, which hit me harder than I expected. I mean, I wasn't exactly faithful, so I couldn't really blame him for doubting me, but hearing it out loud made the situation feel even worse. I told him the truth, though. Dave and I had always used protection, and we weren't really getting any action. Deep down, I knew it was his. There wasn't any question in my mind about that, but I could tell from the way he reacted that he wasn't ready to be a dad. We sat in silence for what felt like hours, both of us avoiding the obvious reality that our fling was now turning into something much bigger than we had ever intended. In the weeks that followed, things between us became strained. We stopped meeting up after work, and the texts that had once been flirty and fun turned into awkward, stilted conversations about what we were going to do. He started pulling away, and I could feel it happening in real time. I tried to keep things light, tried to pretend like we could just go back to how things were, but it was clear that our relationship had changed. The carefree vibe was gone, replaced by this heavy, unspoken tension. I won't lie, I felt pretty abandoned. Here I was, pregnant with his child, and he was acting like it was all just too much for him. I didn't want to be that person who demanded commitment, but I also didn't want to do this alone. I hadn't signed up for single motherhood, and I definitely wasn't ready for it. I spent a lot of nights crying, wondering how I had let my life get so out of control. And as for Dave, he cut me off completely. After the divorce papers were signed, he blocked my number and made it clear he wanted nothing to do with me ever again. I don't blame him. I had lied to him, betrayed him, and then he found out about the baby that wasn't even his. I'm surprised he didn't hate me more than he already did. In a way, his anger was the only thing that made sense in this mess. So there I was, trying to figure out how to move forward. I didn't have the comfort of a steady relationship, no partner to lean on, and the baby's father was drifting further and further away. I tried to keep working, to maintain some sense of normalcy, but it was hard. People at the office started to notice my growing belly, and the whispers began. I could feel their judgment, even if they didn't say it to my face. It wasn't long before my affair became common knowledge. Someone must have put the pieces together. Me, suddenly pregnant and separated from my husband, while spending a little too much time around the same guy at work. The rumor mill kicked into overdrive. I'd catch coworkers giving me side glances, and a few people even asked me outright if the baby was his. I didn't confirm or deny anything. I just let them think what they wanted. At that point, what could I even say? The truth was worse than the rumors. The guy from work started distancing himself even more after that. It was almost like he was trying to erase his involvement in the whole thing. He stopped sitting with me during breaks, avoided eye contact in meetings, and would leave the office right at 5 p.m. without even a word. I knew what was happening. He was trying to escape the mess we'd created. He didn't want to deal with the baby, the drama, or me. And honestly, I didn't have the energy to chase him. My family wasn't much help either. When I told my mom about the pregnancy, she wasn't exactly thrilled. "What were you thinking?" she asked, her voice full of disappointment. I didn't have a good answer. I had been selfish, careless, and now I was paying the price for it. My mom didn't disown me or anything, but I could tell she wasn't happy about becoming a grandmother in these circumstances. She offered to help me out here and there, but there was always this underlying tension between us. As my due date got closer, I started to panic. I wasn't ready to be a mom. I had no idea how to take care of a baby, let alone do it by myself. The guy from work was pretty much out of the picture at that point. We hadn't talked in weeks, and I knew deep down that he wasn't going to step up. I started to wonder if I should reach out to him one last time to see if he wanted to be involved, but part of me didn't want to face more rejection. My body was changing in ways I hadn't expected, and it felt like a constant reminder of how badly I had screwed up. I was exhausted all the time, my feet swollen, my emotions all over the place. Every time I felt the baby kick, it was like a gut punch, not because I didn't want him, but because I didn't know how I was going to handle all of this. I started seeing a therapist, hoping to get some clarity on everything. She didn't judge me, which was a relief, but she also didn't have any easy answers. She helped me understand that I was grieving, not just the loss of my marriage, but the life I thought I'd have. It wasn't what I wanted to hear, but it was the truth. I had messed up, and now I had to live with the consequences. As the weeks went on, I slowly started to come to terms with the fact that I was going to be doing this alone. There wasn't going to be a happy reunion with the baby's father, no fairy tale co-parenting situation. This was my reality now. A single mom with a baby I hadn't planned for, no partner to rely on, and a future that looked nothing like the one I had imagined. The fight happened when I was about 7 months pregnant. I had been trying to keep a low profile, stay out of everyone's way, and just survive the mess I'd created. But of course, things weren't going to stay quiet for long. The guy from work had been avoiding me, like I said before. But one day, he couldn't avoid me anymore. It started with a work meeting. I was already feeling anxious being in the same room as him, but I kept my head down, trying not to draw attention to myself. The tension between us had been building for weeks. I could feel everyone's eyes on me whenever I walked into a room, their whispers just loud enough for me to catch fragments of my own scandalous story. After the meeting, I pulled him aside. I didn't plan for it to happen there, but I was tired of his ghosting. I didn't want a relationship or anything dramatic. I just wanted to know what role, if any, he planned to play in his child's life. I figured I had the right to ask, so I asked him to talk privately, and he agreed, but I could tell by the look on his face that he wasn't interested in this conversation. We stepped outside the building, around the corner where no one could see us. As soon as we were out of sight, I felt my nerves kick in, but I couldn't back down now. I took a deep breath and got straight to the point. "We need to talk about the baby," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. He crossed his arms, leaning against the wall, looking everywhere but at me. "What about it?" he asked, his tone clipped. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I just need to know what you're planning to do. Are you going to be involved at all? I can't keep doing this on my own, and you..." That's when he cut me off. "I never asked for this," he snapped, his voice suddenly harsh. "This was never supposed to happen. You're the one who screwed up your life, not me." I felt the words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had expected him to be distant, but the way he said it, like I was some kind of burden, took me by surprise. "I didn't plan for this either, but we're here now. This is your kid too. Don't you think you have some responsibility?" He scoffed, shaking his head. "I never wanted to be a dad. You're the one who couldn't keep your marriage together, and now you're dragging me into your mess? I'm not interested. Figure it out yourself." The anger flared up inside me, boiling over before I could stop it. "That's it? You're just going to walk away like this never happened? You're such a coward," I spat, my voice shaking with fury. His face hardened. He finally looked me in the eye, his expression cold. "Coward? You're calling me a coward? You're the one who couldn't keep it together. You cheated on your husband, wrecked your own life, and now you're standing here acting like I owe you something? You ruined everything, not me." I opened my mouth to respond, but he wasn't done. He stepped closer, his voice lowering, almost a hiss. "Do you know what people are saying about you at work? How pathetic you look? You threw away your whole life for what? A fling? And now you expect me to clean up your mess? I want nothing to do with you or that baby. You made your bed. Now lie in it." I felt my face burn with humiliation. I stood there, unable to move as his words sank in. My mind raced, trying to come up with something to say, some defense, but nothing came. He was right. I had wrecked my life. I had made one mistake after another, and now I was standing here, 7 months pregnant, being told I was pathetic. And the worst part, I couldn't even argue with him, but he wasn't finished. He leaned in, his voice dropping even lower. "You think this baby's going to fix anything? You're just going to end up alone, raising a kid that wasn't supposed to exist. No one's going to feel sorry for you, least of all me. So stop trying to guilt trip me into this." I felt tears well up in my eyes, but I blinked them away. I refused to cry in front of him. "You don't have to be involved in my life," I said quietly, my voice barely holding steady. "But this is your child. You'll have to live with that whether you like it or not." He rolled his eyes, clearly done with the conversation. "I'm done, okay? I don't want anything to do with you or this situation. Don't call me, don't text me, and don't come looking for me. You made this mess, now you clean it up." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there alone. I watched him disappear around the corner, the reality of my situation sinking in like a weight in my chest. The humiliation, the anger, the sadness, it all hit me at once. I had messed up in so many ways, but this felt like rock bottom. I stood there for a while trying to collect myself. I knew people were right inside, probably whispering about what had just happened. And as much as I hated it, Jake was right about one thing. This was my mess. I couldn't run from it anymore. No one was coming to save me. When I finally walked back into the office, my face was flushed, my body heavy with the weight of the confrontation. I avoided eye contact, headed straight for my desk, and sat down, trying to pretend everything was fine. But I could feel their eyes on me, their judgment hanging in the air like a cloud. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I couldn't focus on anything, my mind replaying the argument over and over again. By the time I got home, I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the ultrasound picture on my nightstand. This was it. There was no fixing what I had done, no making things right. I was in this alone, and no matter how much I regretted it, there was no going back. Update. After that explosive encounter with the baby's dad, I felt completely adrift. I spent the next few weeks in a haze, grappling with the fallout from our fight. Every time I saw him at work, I felt this heavy knot in my stomach. It was as if he had left a mark on my life that I couldn't shake off. He avoided me like the plague, and honestly, I couldn't blame him. I didn't want to see him either. I tried to focus on preparing for the baby. I had started researching everything I could about pregnancy and parenting, but it only added to my anxiety. I felt so unprepared for what was to come. I had never envisioned this kind of life for myself, and now I was stuck in it. My apartment was filled with baby clothes and essentials I bought in a panic, trying to make sure I was ready for the little one. But inside, I still felt lost. As the days turned into weeks, the isolation began to gnaw at me. I missed having someone to talk to, someone who could reassure me that everything was going to be okay. My friends had mostly drifted away since the news of my pregnancy broke, some embarrassed to be associated with my scandal, others unsure how to handle it. The few who reached out either tried to offer support or made it clear they were disappointed in my choices. I didn't want pity and I didn't want judgment. Eventually, I decided to reach out to my mom. I thought maybe we could start to mend our relationship now that I was facing this huge life change. I invited her over, hoping to have an honest conversation about everything that had happened. I wanted her support, even if it was just a small gesture. I was scared, and I needed someone in my corner. When she arrived, the atmosphere was tense. I could sense the disappointment in her voice right away. "How are you holding up?" she asked, not quite meeting my eyes. I took a deep breath, deciding to open up. "Honestly, Mom, I'm struggling. This wasn't how I pictured my life. I don't know how to be a single mom, and I feel so alone." Her expression softened a bit, but she still had that air of disapproval. "You put yourself in this position. I can't pretend to be happy about it," she said, "but I want to help. Just know that this isn't the life I hoped for you." We talked for hours, and it felt good to share my fears and worries. She listened, even if it was clear she didn't fully understand. By the end of the evening, I felt a little lighter. Maybe things could start to change, even if only a little. Meanwhile, the weeks continued to fly by, and I prepared for the arrival of my baby. My mom helped me with a few things, like setting up the nursery and picking up essentials. We had our ups and downs, but she was trying, and I appreciated that. I realized I needed her more than I'd initially thought. Finally, the day came. I went into labor, and it was every bit as terrifying as I had imagined. The pain was overwhelming, but I held on to the thought of meeting my child. After hours of labor, I finally heard the crying, and everything changed. When I held my baby for the first time, all the fear and anxiety seemed to melt away. It was a boy, and I named him Noah. In that moment, nothing else mattered. I was a mother now, and regardless of how I got here, I was determined to give him the best life I could. As I settled into my new life as a single mom, I began to understand that my mistakes didn't define me. Yes, I had messed up, but now I had a chance to build something new. I was ready to face the challenges ahead, no matter how daunting they seemed. My son is growing up without a father, but I'll try my best to give him a good childhood. I didn't hear from my ex-husband anymore, which was good. I think I wouldn't be able to handle the guilt if he saw me pregnant and actually showing it. It would be weird and awkward. I'm glad we left each other's lives. Now I could focus on my future, after learning a valuable lesson on relationships, honesty, and fidelity. I hope my story comes up in your mind in case you start thinking about cheating on your significant other. I don't think anyone would like to be in my situation. Be honest to the people you love. I wasn't, and look at me now.